Veronica, can you verify a quorum is present by taking roll?
We got one. When I call your name, please let me know that you are here. Correct. Scott Mark.
Here.
Faith Dayton.
Present. Here.
Jeanette Ornelas. Or Hannah Manis. Anyone with City of Fort Bragg? Joanne Brewer.
Here.
Joanna Olson.
Here.
Judy Albert.
Present.
Neil Leggett. Matt McMullen.
Here.
I will note that Jeanette Ornelas just came in. Ashley Hathaway, here. Travis Wright.
Here.
Teresa DeSimone, here. Paul Davis. We have a quorum.
First off, public comment. Do we have any comment on non-agendized items?
Just in case I need to say it for the Brown Act, I do have an update on the COC for a COC program, which I'll give later on under the funding, but I just wanted everybody to know.
Veronica, is there any other public comment?
Anyone on Zoom?
Veronica, is somebody trying to say something on that?
No,
Okay.
I'm just trying to get it to look right.
All right. There's no public comment. We'll move on to approval of minutes. Just corrections.
I moved to approve the March 17th meeting.
Right, yes. Get a second.
And second. Thank you, Teresa. Commissioner public comment?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Any discussion on the minutes, public comment? All right, good, you can take the vote.
When I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain to the motion on the table. Amanda.
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
Faith,
Yes.
Jeanette,
Yes.
Joanne,
Yes.
Joanna,
Abstain.
Judy,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Ashley,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Motion approved. Motion approved. Oh, I know.
Right. We're gonna move on to announcements.
A Space, a local nonprofit here in Ukiah that has a site. They do recovery meetings. They're going to be having a gala on Sunday, June 8th. The theme is Havana Nights. It is a catered 3-course meal, dancing, auction, all kinds of fun stuff. Tickets are $75. We're also doing table hosting at, for a table of 8 is $500. That's $100 off the ticket price. And if you're interested, let me know and I can get you set up.
Okay. Any other announcements? All right, we'll move on to reports and presentations. First off, updates from local jurisdictions. Megan, County Mendocino.
I was taking some notes to myself thinking, what do I have to update you all on? I will note that the various contracts are moving through the process. There are 2 shelter contracts that were scheduled for the Board of Supervisors tomorrow. This is not the HAP contracts. This is the formerly GA, now HIP funding contracts. There are some changes that a Board of Supervisors are requesting at the last minute. So those contracts are going to be delayed. And Veronica is moving forward with the HAP funded shelter contracts, which we hope to get through the process before the fiscal year starts. It's always our hope. But I'm not 100% sure that will happen. I will note that our Board of Supervisors are looking closely at contracts and sometimes have requests or changes near the end of the process, which slow things down. Did you want to say something, Sage? Or you don't have to.
I just feel like there's just some. I think it's good for CSC to be aware of what used to be general assistance funds in our contract for shelter has been cut, and this is the last year that those are going to be provided, is what we've been notified of. And so that's just a piece to know, is that it is a portion of the Building Bridges shelter funding that has been pretty steady for 10 years. Yeah, longer. So there's that, but then some of the pieces that they're putting into, that they're requesting to have added, relate to putting responsibility for the, and this is vague, but so we're kind of exploring what the specifics of it might mean, but around anything that's distributed, so sleeping bags, blankets, sheets, pillows, anything that might be distributed to people that gets found out in encampments or creeks that could be linked back to the distribution from shelters, that it would be the shelter's responsibility for doing cleanup and disposal of those items from anywhere found on the street. Which, so just as I think I know that there's challenges around the accumulation of litter and trash and places around the community, and that there's lots of different ways to try to approach it and solve it. And this could be one way to try to solve that, but it feels like it's putting the pressure to address the problem on the wrong place, like under a scope of a contract that it doesn't, like emergency shelter is what the contract is for. So they're wanting to put it under a shelter contract, which is not an outreach contract. It's just we're trying to navigate some challenges around it.
I will say this is language that's been introduced to me today, like within the last 2 hours. So I will say that I believe this language is something the Board of Supervisors will be seeking in every single contract, because I made the same point. And this language around distributed items is going to be added to the McCavan harm reduction contract. So I have a feeling this is going to be language that's going to be asked to be included in any, I said at the same point, I said it felt to me like something to put in a street outreach contract, but the public just mixes everything up into one big stew. So I think that is the request right now as it stands. And I will acknowledge that our process is difficult because we go through negotiating contract language with the contractors and it doesn't actually get to the decision makers till the last second. It's frustrating to them because they haven't had an opportunity to engage in that conversation until they actually have to vote on it. So I'm really sympathetic to that problem. But this is what happens sometimes in the process. And I haven't figured out a way to avoid it.
I think one of the primary challenges with it is that it's the ones that when our funds are being reduced with additional deliverables being added, and that is a challenge. And I'm just going to say it, that if it comes down to agree to this in a contract or stop being a place where people can get sleeping bags, we'll stop being a place that gives out any kind of, that accepts or gives out donations. And that's really unfortunate. Because there's so many different places where people can get items, and for building bridges to be held responsible for wherever they might have gotten their items it's not something that I can't ask my staff to do that. I don't have staff, especially with funding cuts. I don't have staff that I can ask to do that.
Maybe I was misunderstood. I thought the shelters did not give out items other than clothing.
No, we give out sleeping bags.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. You do not.
We don't. But satellite tags on this stuff?
No, it's a good point.
Anything that's found is going to be said like, oh, it's because B2 gave it to them, regardless of whether or not we did, or they got it from Dorcas, or they got it from somebody who drives around the community with stuff in their trunk.
I
And
think that you're not wrong. I think this is an interest on the part of the Board of Supervisors to limit distribution sites of those kinds of items. So that is intent.
absolutely. So I just want to know, is it still being heard tomorrow at the board, or
No.
is it being pulled from the agenda?
It's being pulled from the agenda. I'm, last minute working out this with, we don't need to do it right here, but it is, I'm letting the COC know that these items, these particular contracts are being pulled. And the reason I wanted to highlight it with you all is I'm not totally sure that the same request won't happen when the HAP contracts get to the board. I don't know. So this is why I think here we are.
So under the HAP funding, that would fall under street outreach. And that
I
would
agree.
require a separate contract under our processing, because that would combine two separate funding activities into one agreement.
I think though that the request from the Board of Supervisors is not to do that. Right, they're requesting the shelter sites not distribute items that could end up in the waterway. They're not asking to do it, they're asking them not to do it.
So with HAP, there's COC and county.
Right, I don't know how to negotiate that.
To think about,
Exactly.
if that comes up, this board is going to need to have a response on how it sees that.
I think it also, it begs a bigger conversation, not just the day before the, like the last minute,
Totally agree.
around what's an effective way to address these issues that is not just saying, put it on the shelter. And because there's so many arguments for saying that as far as distribution sites, it's a better model to have a designated distribution site that has some practices in place, like keeping track of how many blankets people get and how often they're getting things, and actually, which we do, have parameters in place around how often and frequently you can get items. Or like, if you're a person who has a challenge with constantly losing the things, like we have exchange program systems where, so how do we want to address this as a community is a much bigger problem than just saying the shelters are to blame. And let's fix it there. And I hear you that you're saying they're likely to add this to just anything.
So my communication has been not, again, this is about in the last hour having this communication. So I don't know for sure where this is going, but if I think I can imagine, and I think I'm probably not wrong, that that concept of good neighbor clause, which includes a couple different things, will be requested in homeless related contracts moving forward. And that's just what if I was predicting the future, that's what I would predict.
And when you're talking about the good neighbor clause, you're talking directly about just that whoever was the source of the donation is the one who then, if it's, has to clean it up.
I think, so the language, and I'm sorry, I don't know what to do because, I guess this is sort of an agendized item, right? It's a report from me about relevant things, okay. So, I think, and now I already forgot what your question was, Judy, so what am I answering?
The good neighbor policy.
Right.
In other words,
So the way this came up is there's 2 shelter contracts. Again, they're not the HAP shelters. And the other item that's on the agenda tomorrow is the Fort Bragg Winter Shelter, and there was a little bit of a clerical error that we fixed. So that one is sort of set aside. There were 2 contracts, Sage is right, and I don't think I ever updated the board on this. The amount of funding that GA had been contributing to the 2 shelters was reduced by half this year, and it's the last year that it will be provided. The county Board of Supervisors have reduced the general fund allocation that used to go to Department of Social Services. It's about $4 million, maybe 3, I can't remember exactly. Because of that, the Department of Social Services is cutting a number of contracts that they had previously had in place. These are just 2 out of many more. So that is happening. Sage is right. There has been a reduction in half of those traditional contracts, and this is the last year that they're going to be put in place. So that thing happened. That's happening. At the same time, the Board of Supervisors have asked for some language around good neighbor clause, maintaining the site in good condition, encouraging people from congregating in public rights of way, work cooperative with local law enforcement to resolve challenges with individuals who are repeatedly loitering. And then this, literally in the last 15 minutes, this kind of concept of either refraining from distributing items, or if you're distributing them, being responsible for cleaning them up. Again, that's the same clause that is being requested in McAdams harm reduction contract that is also being pulled tomorrow. And if I was reading the tea leaves, I would anticipate that this is an interest of the Board of Supervisors in homeless related contracts. That's what I would think if I was reading the tea leaves. They're kind of like big tea leaves. So I have to predict. I'm just the messenger here to all of you, and I'm happy to take that.
I mean, it is interesting because there's so many places that do distribute clothes and blankets, et cetera, and I don't know how they can pin it all on, building bridges.
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to speak from them, for whatever reason. They don't have a funding relationship. I think they would add this into any funding relationship. So yeah, they can't force other distribution sites to not do what they're doing. I know it's a source of frustration for many people. Whether it's realistic or not, that's what the concern is. I think when they clean up waterways and they're cleaning up a lot of sleeping bags and a lot of blankets and a lot of tents, that's where the frustration comes from. Whether it's legit or not, there is a sense that there is a lot of removal of discarded items that have been donated when they do cleanups of areas, and there's not a good funding source for that or a good process for cleanup at all.
Seems like there should be bigger things we're worried about. You personally asked me, I'm new to this, so sorry if I'm out of pocket or wrong. But homeless people come with stuff and I get it, like they can't be just throwing it away, but we have to educate, we have to help, we have to talk, we have to tell them, pick up after themselves. We can't pin it on one organization and say, you're responsible. We hand out sleeping bags, we hand out tents. Like, I think it's a bigger situation that we need to tackle together as a team and as a board, and not as, oh, this is the shelter's fault. They give it out. They need to do it. Why don't we all go clean? Why don't we ask the people to go help us clean? Think outside the box.
I don't disagree. I'm just sharing the language that has been asked to be included in the contract, and since I can see it potentially being repeated in other requests. I didn't know all about that. Yeah. I think at this moment, I don't think unless I don't see this as an action for the COC right now.
There's no action.
No. So it's more of a FYI. I do want to point out that if somewhat substantial changes are requested of the HAP contracts, they may, I don't know how to navigate that right now. I can't think it through, but that it may come back to the board in that way. Because it would be a departure from the contract language that you've approved in the past.
So just a question, Megan, I heard about this, who does clean those up? I mean, who's your?
It's a very complex debacle that is causing a lot of trouble. There is not a funding source in the county for doing cleanups. There's a lot of contentious feelings about whether Fish and Game should be involved in a waterway. Sometimes it's state property. Areas that are difficult to clean up are often in areas of jurisdictional confusion, right next to where city property is and a county property is and some state property is. I will say from our experience, Caltrans has a very organized system right now. They let us know ahead of time when they're doing cleanups. They have a schedule. So they're taking pretty aggressive responsibility for their rights of way. But other jurisdictions struggle with that. City of Ukiah seems to use their own sanitation department to kind of handle it, kind of just because, but it's a very unresolved issue.
It's a backbone of it is volunteers.
And
ACE
yes,
led
yes.
some in Ukiah.
The river cleanup people do a river cleanup every year, but it's
Shelter guests do actually go out
Yeah.
and do
Yeah.
cleanups coinciding with.
Rotary Club does a lot of cleanup stuff. The issue's super complicated because areas that sometimes become places that homeless individuals are discarding items become dump sites for household trash as well. So it's really hard to figure out.
That too.
Yeah, it's really hard to figure out the source of that. That's been a source of frustration for the Rotary Club. They'll be clean up like off the side of Orr Creek Road, which I think often is household trash they're cleaning up too.
Yeah.
So it's a mess.
Okay.
It's a mess. In many different ways. Yeah.
Wouldn't be able to help in that.
So Veronica, I have my hand up if I could
Oh,
just.
sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to ask if there's any timeline where the contracts that are being pulled from the Board of Suits tomorrow are going to come back to the agencies being contracted with for review so we can do signatures again and get them right back out. Do you have any idea what that timeline looks like for the revision of the language that you're speaking of?
So I'm trying to get them back on as soon as possible, but you know, it's a last minute ask of our contractors and they have to think it through. So that's the goal, to get it back on the Board of Supervisors agenda as soon as possible. Contracting is very long. I began these contracts 3 months ago.
I know.
So it won't take another 3 months, I can promise you that. But it kind of restarts the process a little bit. It has to go back through a signature gathering process. But the goal, my hope,
And it kind of
Is to
needs to
get
go
it-
back through a negotiation process,
so
not just a signature process.
that may be the case.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that was my not very exciting update, I guess.
It is exciting.
Well, I mean, I don't think I have anything else.
Karen Lovato is with us on Zoom. Karen, did you have anything to add?
So I'm actually Cody. I'm Karen's secretary. She's got a conflict, so I'm just sitting and taking notes for her.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
That's your public comment though.
Any public comments?
I say, that's not going to be like. I mean, just in commenting about this, the immediate reaction, it just seems like it's an overreach. And like Travis says, it seems like this is a scapegoating situation where we're trying to find a quick fix to a problem that requires more comprehensive solution. And I honestly think like if this gets in contracts, like if we look at history, like it's just embarrassing, like to look back and this kind of provision is this kind of contract. I would be embarrassed as a public super.
Oh, yeah, that's better.
Any other public comment? City of Ukiah, Shannon?
I don't think I have a lot to legitimately agree, but like peripherally speaking, I'll say like
I know public transportation, bus service in particular has been tricky around Ukiah because we've done a job on the streets. We're almost done. West Gobi is going to be paved the week of June 9th, and then within a couple of weeks after that, Main Street will be paved. And then hopefully shortly after that, East Gobi will be paved. So we'll be totally done on those streets. We will be starting work on Perkins Street, but we are working closely with MTA. We talk to them regularly. MTA has been very accommodating, very helpful. Our contractors have been less so. So my apologies for all of the inconveniences. We're reaching the end of it, and then we don't have any other really big streets projects in the foreseeable future. So we'll give you all a break from the construction. Yeah.
Shannon, comment? City of Fort Bragg, Jeanette.
Yes, quite a bit, so I wrote notes, so not forget anything. For City of Fort Bragg, so they approved a new build that's gonna be 65 and over, low income apartments on Hazelwood. It's kind of a little outside of city limits, but not too much. And they also have approved for new housing apartments on the main highway across from McDonald's. So all of that is in its planning process. Good question. Yep. Is any of that reserved for homeless or just? I wish I knew that answer, but okay, no, enough. We were talking about, I mean, just within my team, if it's 65 and over, if I had some people say at like River Garden through our HDC, we're getting, if we could get the 65 and older maybe to go to the Hazelwood property, we'd have more open units for families to be able to use that space, since there's going to be a specific, not specific, but more room. So that'd be awesome. So homeless doesn't sound like it would be a criteria for eligibility. I'm not sure. Okay, back it ask and report back. They just told me I was gone. On there. I think that's a City of Fort Bragg one. I was gone last meeting. I was in San Diego, and the care response unit on the justice system side. We did a presentation to the state for the people who get the behavioral health justice intervention funding. And we teamed up with Tracy Police Department. They do something very similar to Crew. It's called Familiar Faces. And so we were able to present on how just the social services world could be alongside law enforcement. Tracy has a bigger city, so they actually have a community resource officer on helping. So the presentation's advancing mobile crisis and behavioral health justice interventions across California. So just being able to provide those resources, guiding them through the process of going out to the campus and doing that mobile outreach and getting workers. They only have 2 on their team, so they're hoping to expand. But we were trying to present how other law enforcement or first responders can integrate that within their department to reduce police contact and help. We had a presentation for a fire department where they are the point of contact for crisis interventions, and they end up helping. So it's kind of, they said, fire, they believe they were the people that could help in their area over, like, we have law enforcement on ours. We also started integrating our Prop 47 grant a little bit. We had our first person move into the transitional housing and started their care plan. Hopefully that will roll out some more. Care response unit has also partnered with Mendocino County, and we did some follow-ups on the coast through the heads up referrals, and we're going out with Mendocino Sheriff actually at the end of this week to provide services out of our city limits. I think that's all I have. Anybody has any questions?
Questions, comments? All right, thanks, Jeanette. There any other reports on these jurisdictions? If not, we'll move on to standing committee reports. First one is strategic planning, Megan.
Yes, so I think as I reported last month, although the month before that, our strategic planning committee, it's not exactly on hold, but it's pausing while we work on some of the elements of the HAP 6 report, which is really incredibly dense and complicated, require stakeholder meetings and a whole lot of information that will be relevant to strategic planning as we update our strategic plan. So we're waiting for that process to unfold.
Do we want to update about our conversation this morning?
Well, to that end, I guess, yes. No, I mean, we can. We're almost done finalizing our contract with RCAC, who will be facilitating a series of stakeholder meetings. Like, you don't have to put this in your calendar, but conceptually, these meetings will take place inland the week of June 24 and coast July 8 timeline. So it's a series of required stakeholder meetings for the HAP 6 application, but we're trying to think of it broadly or much more broadly than we're required to have these meetings and have them be an opportunity to really engage stakeholders and persons with lived experience. And we're also going to have a specific meeting with tribal entities as well, but you'll get a lot more information as we get clarity about it.
Should we convene the strategic planning committee before those stakeholder meetings? Maybe so they can weigh in on the agenda and stuff?
We should probably try to do that. So yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
So maybe, yeah, that's a good idea. That's my update.
It's not gonna be- Comment?
They're having fun.
We'll move on to sheltering solutions, Veronica.
We met last week. The meeting went well. We made some significant progress on the emergency shelter written standards for the COC to expand to address non-congregate shelter projects. We were framing it in, we need to add some guidelines on how to operate a project like that. But when we were reviewing the written standards, the document doesn't really work that way. It doesn't tell you have to operate a shelter by having X number of staff. And I mean, there's certain guidelines in there, but the prioritization really, that direction should be in the contracting language. Because different funding sources and different providers may be targeting different populations. So if we say, as a COC, we're first gonna, prioritize seniors. Like we could come up with a policy like that, but it wouldn't live in the written standards. It would be separate, and it would be like a planning or a prioritization for funding document. And so the committee has kind of narrowed its focus to reviewing where additional direction or criteria, guidance might be needed when operating a non-congregate shelter program, such as out of a motel voucher, like motel vouchers. So we've got some changes that we're working on. At the next meeting on July 9th, I'm going to be presenting those revised written standards to them, and then we'll bring it back to the COC for final approval. Did I miss anything from that meeting? We talked about Willits some more. We're supporting them as much as we can. They are investigating a site in downtown Willits to open up a day use homeless resource center that also has a few overnight beds. One of the issues they've ran into is the city of Willits shelter ordinance, they believe, limits it to any site it can provide a maximum shelter to a maximum number of 10 people at any given location. And so they're trying to figure out how to address that. Yeah, I think that's a good update.
It makes your head hurt, doesn't it?
Veronica, are there any public comments? Okay, if not, going to coordinated entry and discharge planning.
The committee met on an off month on, I think it was the 14th or 15th, last Thursday. And they approved revisions to the coordinated entry policies and procedures, which are included in your packet for final approval later on today. I completely forgot that it has to be brought to the board, so they thought that they approved it and we're moving on live. So so we'll get it approved today and get it distributed as long as you guys are okay with those changes. But that was the major focus on the packet. It's to gather data on the region within Mendocino County that people would like to live in. We've defined region in here, and so we'll look at those later. And it also provides direction on how to use that region preference or choice by site-based permanent housing, site-based coordinated entry participating projects. The plateau in Fort Bragg has been struggling with getting good referrals because the people who are prioritized, most of them don't want to live on the coast. And so it takes like you go through 20 people to find one that might be interested. So this is our way of asking them up front, would you be interested in housing in Fort Bragg or on the coast? And if yes, then you'll be considered for those projects. But if you're like, no, I don't, I need to live in Ukiah, like this is where I need to be, then you wouldn't be referred to the plateau. And so it provides some guidance on that and it defines the regions. And Nutmeg Consulting were renewing their contract for the 3rd year. We'll need to do a new RFP after this one, so we'll include that one in the next RFP that we're doing. Because every RFP is good for 3 renewals. So we've got them for another year. They've also expanded their work with us under HMIS, but I'll give a little more update on that later.
Thanks, Veronica. Any public comment? Next up is community accountability.
So we had a meeting, and we just need to do a follow-up meeting for our next upcoming meeting, so I do believe that we had missed you, Jeanette, from the previous meeting. But we are going to discuss about the next steps in making sure that we follow through with some of the roles that we're putting together, and not only just that, understanding how it all ties in with the other committees as well. And with the Community Accountability Committee, it is supposed to work in tandem, like the Lived Experience Board. It's also supposed to work in tandem with the Strategic Planning Board. The Community Accountability Committee, the CAC, is essentially a very strong component in my opinion, the COC, because oftentimes a lot of organizations like to say that they're practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we've changed some of that language to be more palatable. But unfortunately, when it comes to actual practice, those words and those actions and those practices become, I guess, lost in the weeds of bureaucracy at times. And I say that very kindly, but really. Right? So I think it's very important, and I think it's also very important to see the importance in which our organizations can hire people with lived experience. And that can also prevent some of the people re-entering into a system of homelessness. Oftentimes we have to check our own homes and our own selves, either a heart check, some people like to call it spiritual check, whatever check, you have to check, right? We all have to clean up our laundry, we all have to wash our dishes, all these things have to be done, right? And oftentimes, in a lot of agencies, we like to hide dirty dishes under our beds, right? And so it's very important with the Community Accountability Committee that we not focus on exposing and being like, how dirty is that? But how can we do it better, right? How can we make it more cleanliness and in a sense with our organizations to where people can feel like, wow, they're transparent, they're being honest, they're not at the best place where they're going. They haven't done an organization internal check, but at least they're starting, right? And they're implementing better practices and ways to have a healthy workplace environment and also have healthy service delivery because they go hand in hand. So other than that, I'm very excited for the CAC and what's all of the hard work that the organization has, the committee has been doing. And with that being said, I think that's it.
Thanks, Camille. Full comment? Monica, did you have anything to add?
I'll add it under membership committee, actually. So no.
Right, so we'll move on to HMIS and performance measurement.
She's gonna do membership first, we just.
Oh. Right, membership, sorry.
So, at the last Community Accountability Committee meeting, the idea was developed to meet jointly with the membership committee to co-facilitate the next, new COC member invitation that we do every July. Because the CAC would like to promote itself. It's a new committee and it would like to share with the community what they're doing and what their vision is. And that goes hand in hand with what the annual COC member invitation does. And so I'll be calling a meeting very soon that will be a collaborative between those two, so that we can work together on that. So, and then additionally, we have a new member organization, the Intertribal Wellness Alliance Incorporated, submitted their membership application last week. And so they are a new member of the COC. They're a general member. Christina Castorena is here representing the organization on Zoom. Christina, do you have anything that you want to add about Intertribal Wellness Alliance?
It's Indigenous Wellness Alliance.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And not too much. We're just here to help try to get our clients housed. We do provide the CalAIM services for community. We do the community support services here in office with our members. And that's about it. I'm here to learn all that I can and do what we can for our clients here in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. My apologies for that.
Oh, no
mistake.
problem.
I don't know how I did that. Yeah, that's all I have for membership.
Veronica, any public comment?
I'm really happy you're here, Christina. I'm glad you joined the committee.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to HMIS and performance measurement.
So attached to your agenda is the data completeness report from last month. Nothing totally outstanding.
Starting on page 7 of your packet, apologies, the page numbers got cut off. I wanted to share this is likely the last time you'll get one of these. Because well, maybe not quite the last time. You might get one or two. But so the other agenda item on here is Nutmeg Consulting Incorporated. We have done a short-term contract with them for under $50,000 to help us with our HMIS administration. This is going to include a data scorecard tool where folks who are HMIS end users will also be given a username and password to a portal where they can upload a report out of HMIS that will then review the data quality and provide them a scorecard on the data quality, data completeness, all of that for their project. We can start doing that for the full system. I'm not sure 100% what it's going to look like yet. We haven't had a demo of the system, but so we can bring back to you guys more specific or tailored data as opposed to this, scorecard and giving everybody an A through an F, depending on how good they're doing with their, compared to HUD data standards. And that's just one set of HUD data standards. And if your project doesn't align with those, you're always going to get an F. And so it's kind of meaningless for street outreach projects. And so if folks can start thinking about what they would like to see for the performance, we can do this monthly, we can do it quarterly. But just start thinking about what kind of a report you would like to see instead. In addition to the scorecard, we're also going to be leveraging Nutmeg's ticketing system. So all HMIS end users will also be given a access to a portal where they can submit a ticket or support request. Anything from password changes to I need a specific report to I need a project built, and anything and everything in between. Amy and I, well, at least Amy for sure. My access is gonna, I don't know. I might just go. But so that she can be managing those requests that come in. So it's not just Nutmeg staff doing it. It'll also be our internal staff. The HMIS committee, there was a lot of discussion this last time. Megan, I'm kind of.
Let me pick it up. Yeah. So I did want to, I think this issue is going to come to the COC board and it's going to come pretty soon. So I want to make sure that we have an opportunity for me to lay the groundwork. And so you're also ready when it comes to the COC. Things are changing in an interesting way with people's interest in HMIS. You remember for years, we were begging people to use HMIS because we really wanted them to, and we were not, it was a different environment. We were begging them to use HMIS and we were not being graded to an extent by the state, by HMIS. So it was the system we were asking people to use. It didn't have much consequence in the world. Things have changed. And we now have 4 organizations right now who've asked for HMIS user access that are not required to use the system. So they do not have a state or federal regulation telling them that they have to use the system. It's prompted a lot of conversation and confusion, and the HMIS committee revisited our HMIS guidelines at the last meeting. And they're not guidelines, what are they called?
Policies and procedures.
Our policies and procedures around HMIS are silent about the criteria in which someone gets to be a user. Because we were begging people to be users all the time. We never really defined whether you got to be a user or not. So we have no language in there saying the criteria in which somebody can be a user. So that's presenting a challenge. On top of that, I realized I had a different framework in mind that I didn't think about until this weekend. What's coming to the COC now are people who are asking to be HMIS viewers, but not necessarily HMIS users. So there's kind of a distinction there. There are people who feel like they can serve their clients better, they can coordinate better, they can provide better housing outcomes for individuals if they could view HMIS. They're probably not wrong. At the same time, we have some organizations who are seeking HMIS access because they're community support providers who will be able to bill for people that they can find in HMIS, and it has a financial advantage to them. It's adding a whole complexity of complications for us that we're frankly dealing with because we don't have, this is just new to all of us. So the reason I'm bringing it to you is that the COC is responsible for HMIS ultimately. The COC is responsible for the regulations that define HMIS, and we are going to have to craft guidelines about who is allowed to be a user and who is allowed to be a viewer if we want to allow viewing access. I want to remind everyone that HMIS was not designed that way. We cannot limit HMIS access right now to a single user. So, I mean, a single client, a view. So that adds a lot of complication to the whole experience. So I'll just pause right there. The committee spent some time trying to puzzle this through last time. They don't have any draft language yet to bring to the COC board, but it will be coming soon. And I'm mindful that we do have 4 organizations waiting for answers from us. And Veronica and I are like, we don't know what to do. So we're trying to muddle this through. Any questions for?
I just want to add that, one of my largest concerns is the privacy rights of our clients to the privacy of their data. They didn't give us permission to tell every per ECM or community support provider out there that they're experiencing homelessness. They might not want their doctor knowing, but they're experiencing homelessness, and that's their right to do. And so I'm concerned about the rights that of the clients and their data.
We have that. On the flip side, if a client does want that and has signed a release of information with a provider, we don't have an efficient way to give that provider access to their clients either. So both sides is kind of a muddled mess in that sense right now. In order to kind of like remove some of the intensity around it, I was thinking about the Medi-Cal system. So obviously in social services, we have access to the Medi-Cal system. Many people would like to know whether the clients are enrolled in Medi-Cal, what documents are still missing. Like they just want the keys to the Medi-Cal system because who wouldn't? Super useful. Advocates who were working with someone to enroll in Medi-Cal would say, I'm working with this person. Faith wants me to help her find Medi-Cal. Like, please give me this information. And the state took literally over a decade to develop a portal so that advocates can have access to their clients' information. Our system is so far from being able to do that at the HMIS level. I wish that it was easier to address the requests of these organizations, but we're not set up that way. And frankly, I don't know if our system can do that. So again, HMIS was designed to be like a shelter bed counter. Honestly, that's literally how it's designed. And it's now morphing into the community has much different needs and expectations around this that were not built into the design of the system. That being said, we're going to have to figure out something.
And I will say, as a housing provider, like service provider, it's a case management system as well.
Some people do use it that way.
And can't tell, my housing navigators just are constantly like, don't know how they would do their jobs if they didn't have access to HMIS and
well, your organization is required to use it, so it wouldn't be, that's not it.
No, I'm not afraid that you're going to take away our access.
Get everyone's access.
You have not said any words that made me scared of that. But I mean, to the point, like, I know that it's been written into the COC planning funds to pay for HMIS for years, or you're like right now the county isn't charging users, or the HMIS lead isn't charging users to have an access to it, which is incredibly amazing. It's so important to us that like if it changed to where it was a payment thing, like, okay, yeah, we'll figure that out. But and the buy-in though, like, so how do you just ensuring buy-in, I think it's complicated to some extent because of like just because I have access to say partnerships portal to look up clients that have partnership to see are they eligible for community supports or enhanced care management, doesn't mean I can just go fishing for clients on the portal.
No, but if you were a for-profit organization who wanted to do community supports and you know that you get paid $150 to do outreach to a homeless individual that you can document through HMIS, it would have a lot of financial value to you.
That feels really gross. So
that's what we're kind of like, and I'm not saying I'm not saying, right. So the 4 organizations, which we were completely unprepared for. So the 4 organizations that have requested access are Advocates Health, and we've been going back and forth.
Corporate ECM.
Corporate ECM, right? Who,
it's an ECM program. It's for all of Venice Health.
So that's there. Organization based out of Riverside who wants to do community supports, and I can't even remember their name.
And if you don't know.
And then, so you can see the challenge. And then an organization who I think is called Mendocino Health Alliance, maybe a new community support provider, maybe based in Willits, also can't figure out exactly what that organization is. And longstanding Fort Bragg Police Department has been requesting some clarity and resolution on this, and we haven't been able to give it to them. So there's 4 organizations wrapped up in this challenge.
So something I would just kind of encourage is I've sat with a couple people in this room at ECM and CalAIM collaboratives at a different line of work. And there are a lot of agencies popping up that people are saying, I'm assigned to this agency. I've never talked to a case manager. I've never signed an agreement. I've never signed I've never signed anything. So we just have to be really careful of protecting these people's information, because what they turn into is a number, and it's oh, I tried to make a phone call, didn't happen, but I'm still going to bill for it. And then you have people who, when they do come in to get ECM or CS from legitimate organizations, they're assigned somewhere else. And it turns into this huge, we're seeing it over and over and over
It's
again.
not being easy to get clients transferred to a different agency. That
Even worth, I mean, I've heard, and I don't think it's I can absolutely understand how it could happen. If you enroll a client in community supports, let's say telephonically, you said that your client partnership doesn't know, they enrolled the client because they don't know. You can look in HMIS, see that a service was provided, not by you, but a service was provided, case note that, and bill for it. So HMIS could have significant financial value to certain organizations. And I don't think our local partners, that's their intention at all. But if you grant to one organization, you got to have a good reason why you're not going to grant to another organization, grant access. So it's become this whole thing that we don't really know how to untangle at all.
And the key difference between organizations like NCO and Hospitality Center and RCS and the ones that were getting the requests, the ECM or whatever request, they are participating in coordinated entry. They're using the system. They are HMIS users. They are contributing data. They are saying, I'm working with this client and I need to refer them to housing units, get them on the lists, be active in the housing mendo and the by name list review meetings, actually, participating in the system. That is very different than read-only access to just see who's working with who.
Can I pitch why Fort Bragg PD wants it?
I don't see that.
This is where I think we have some really, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but why don't they should have, so I think about parameters, they should have access. The reason that I think we should have it, and I worked HMIS when I worked at hospitality, so I know how it works. We do winter shelter. We partnered, hospitality does our intakes on HMIS for that, but we just got the Prop 47 grant. We're moving the entire coastline. We're starting to work with Mendo Sheriff. I have one of us going out to Mendocino. There are some people in Mendocino that will not go into Fort Bragg, into a hospitality center on Mondays or Fridays to do their coordinated entry. Pipe dream, we could do coordinated entry and be out in the field doing that. Would love to be able to provide that service for people who have those really high barriers to make it into Fort Bragg, or get on the phone with somebody to do it on the phone with building bridges, because I know that's been an option. Like they're not going to go in. I'll go sit on a bench or a curb or by the beach to do it with them, because they don't have that. Their barrier's so high. We are partnering with hospitality, where we are starting to move some of our clients into transitional housing to be able to have that case management communication. Another example, we're SOAR trained for Social Security, and we started a Social Security entire process with one individual. They've signed ROIs for us to talk to both agencies. They could sign the HMIS one, everyone that needs to be signed. And that way we could do a case management note. Hey, so-and-so started Social Security application. Here are the docs. This is where we're at. Hospitality case manager could see, oh, they already started that with crew. What do they need where they could support that client and do that? So we could, instead of what happened, they started their own. And now I have 2 applications for one individual for Social Security because we weren't able to communicate. being able to refer to any agency to be able to talk. I want access to be a user, to be able to do that. It's not just looking. However,
Our efforts.
yeah, so another example, I had an individual come to live into the plateau. Didn't know who they were, didn't know what they did. It was a call for service of somebody screaming outside Safeway. Same call for service at Harvest Market. They are now trespassed from both grocery stores in Fort Bragg. Because of those behaviors, that's not up to me, that's up to the grocery store, creating more barriers. If I would be able to put her name on, I guess this is the viewing part, on HMIS, be like, this is so-and-so, they came, they were at Building Bridges, they got a voucher, this is why they're here. I'm able to go and call their care team. Hey, I have this person, I need help. This individual had stitches on her toes, bleeding, infection, ended up having to go back to Willits with gangrene and lost another toe. I didn't know their service providers. I mean, we eventually figured it out, but it would have been, that was such a long barrier for us. And so it's not just to peak. And I know that there's some issues because my office sits within a police department. There is a door between me and patrol. I'm pitching I'm giving my, so then if I moved my office into the city of Fort Bragg's town hall, would that change?
As long as the supervision of crew is provided by a law enforcement officer, our HMIS standards require that the agency supervisor has to be able to oversee the data entry into HMIS. So as long as crew is housed in the Fort Bragg Police Department as a unit, if it was in a different department, if it was in community development or something like that, we would have no problem and we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Well, we would because they're not a user at this point, but that particular part.
They operate a shelter and they would have gained access to the shelter and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
But as long as any law enforcement officer could ever see any HMIS data, even opening a file to see, and they see that they're unsheltered, that's a violation of our HMIS privacy policies and HUD's data expectations.
Well, would that, when you talk about a law enforcement officer, because my supervisor's officer, so just because he'd be able to see it.
Yeah.
So what if I am supervisor and he no longer has that access? Can we have HMIS?
So I just want to stop because I think, I think Jeanette's bringing up, there's lots of really good scenarios here. And I believe that the people who want HMIS access want it for good, positive reasons to care for it. I do not,
Yes.
I absolutely believe that. The Riverside people, I don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
But I'm even from the premise that if everybody, let's just include Riverside, had totally a mission that I completely agree with you, Jeanette, on wanting to be able to coordinate care better, help people get housing quicker, help people resolve the barriers. Even if all those things were true, we still just don't have the mechanism in place to grant it because we haven't defined that. So I think that we can get there. We just aren't there yet. And it even gets into the nuance of I feel less worried about somebody being a viewer in some ways than a user. Because if you're a user and you set up a street outreach project and you do a really crummy job on that, in terms of your data maintenance, our metrics go down and we're punished as a community. We used to not be punished when we did a crummy job of entering data. We are now being punished if we do a crummy job, and we have a data dashboard that shows, how successful we are. So I'm reluctant. I can give you an example. Our street outreach program, which is very small and very focused, have been trying for a really long time to get our successes to show up at the state level system. We have not been successful. It still shows a 0 on street outreach house when I know they literally moved someone from the parking lot into Live Oak Apartments. We have done everything we can to try to get it to show up the right way, and it's not. I'm really reluctant to allow users to use the system because it has implications now. So there's just so many different things. But I don't think these requests from the outside organizations are unreasonable. I think they're reasonable requests. I think they want them for good reasons. We can't figure out how to do this in a way that I can say yes to Faith and no to somebody else. I don't know how to do that. I mean, we don't know how to do that as a COC.
The system's actually not even set up for the authorization of data once it's entered for any approval of before it's actually
submitted into the system,
It's
basically.
the system, and I can't distinguish, like, I can't shut it down to certain clients. We maybe can shut it down to certain projects, but we're not even totally sure. So it's really hard to,
You have to get it not only on a project level, you also have to get the data approval level too.
Yeah,
So meaning that so if someone has access to that project, because you are responsible for the scoreboard and the data in, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So you've got to get it on a project level, and then you have to have the man hours, the bandwidth to approve the data that's being entered.
there's many
Not
levels.
really an approval process.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't exist right now, but is she saying she's scored on what's being entered into the system?
I don't really want that. I'd be tediously looking at every single, I'm gonna have the
You don't-
staffing to
there's
do
no
that.
bandwidth.
I don't, there's no way I want to approve every single
Yeah.
person's entry and exit.
Yeah.
Much faster for us.
Yeah,
So,
but
yeah.
it's scored on it.
We're the whole community scored on it. Absolutely.
So what
Absolutely.
would you like a QA? Like my team submits it, I overlook it and submit it. And if I do it wrong, somebody else. Hey, you're holding on to each program. I mean, I used to QA quality assurance for Medi-Cal billing, but I guess we also, PD doesn't bill. And we had great numbers and it would have contributed to the county numbers and none of our numbers were on there.
I totally hear you. I'm reporting out from the HMIS committee saying that our guidelines right now do not clarify who is allowed to have user access and not, and what kind of access. Like, it's literally silent on that. Unfortunately, the only organization that's called out saying cannot have access is a law enforcement
Yeah,
organization.
you don't even know
So-
you could take my participants and put them on a geo project and give me access to the geo project.
No, I could take your participants, we could build a geo project, but you're not required to use it. So if I let you do that, do I have to let Riverside? Again, I'm just picking on Riverside, so we
Yeah.
literally don't know who they are. So it's not like personal.
Yeah.
I keep saying I here too. It's really you all. You all have to figure this out. So we're taking too much time because we need to check out the shelter context too. I'm just saying the HMIS committee, which used to be kind of like dull and boring, now has really been like having to grapple with these complicated issues. I know that there are organizations that really want this, and we haven't given them the answer that we've given them any answer. I totally get that. It needs to be worked through the HMIS committee. It needs to be brought to the COC board, and we're going to have to resolve it.
Sit on board. But I think the hard part is what I hear you say is giving out information where people are homeless. Give that out. I'm sorry, my officers can run anything and find out way more than HMIS ever. So if my officers were interested on an individual, the way they run you, find your jobs, your past addresses, they got it. Sometimes I have to go ask them, and maybe we'll give it to me. But I have my own login, I have my own computer where I could sign into HMIS. They could be over there, but my street outreach person that's going to be housed in a church in Mendocino, where they're given a space, maybe she could just get it because she's going to be there dealing with the homeless population. I don't know if there's a way to word that to be able to, but it's just a disservice to all of our clients, or it's going to take longer to be able to do that. And that's.
I hear that. Adventist Health feels the same way, that right now their lack of access is a disservice to their work as well. That's street medicine and the other things. I totally get it. Come to the next HMIS committee meeting and we can have more fun like hashing this out, because it started just last week. It wasn't a huge high priority until now it suddenly has become. So like literally in the last couple of months, there's been a lot of energy around this topic. There wasn't for a decade until recently.
When's the next meeting?
I don't know in front of me. It's on here.
June 12th.
June 12th,
In this room.
2:30.
It's my attendance. I can't help but think like if partnership, I'll come to the meeting, but if partnership knows that people are using that, because that seems like a point, like does partnership know that this is being used or could be used
So
for something they're billing?
I'm not sure they care.
partnership is actually supposed to be telling them, because we have a data sharing agreement with partnership to do client matching and to provide to them certain HMIS data elements so they can say, okay, these members match an HMIS. Okay, ECM or community supports provider, you go find these people because we have their Medi-Cal information.
But
So it's really the managed care provider's responsibility to provide these information.
But they justifiably don't always know. So if
Yeah.
you were saying, if you're supposed to say, I'd like to enroll Paul, I've been working with him in street medicine forever, and I can document that he's homeless through the HMIS system from partnerships. They'd be like, great.
Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah, so
Yeah, good point.
I mean, at the end of the day, my team just wants to help.
I totally get it. I believe it. I understand it. I would say in the meantime, particularly if you have a release of information, I mean, I would tell you anything you wanted to know from HMIS if you have a release of information. So
I want to
that-
case manage. I want to be able to work with hospitality on our person we just put into transitional housing. They have to go my guidelines and they have to do his guidelines or their guidelines circle. But like, if they don't meet those, then we're not paying for the transitional housing bed. Fort Bragg PD Prop 47 is paying for transitional housing for them, being able to case manage with them. And hey, yeah, they attended their group. They had to do 3 this week. But yes, they met with their care manager and they met with the crew member. It's
Okay, so the meeting will be on June 12th, and it sounds like there's a priority in trying to get these guidelines cleared as soon as possible.
Megan, can I just clarify, there's gonna be, so the June 12th meeting is to follow up on this topic and work on what the next steps are, what the solutions are?
it's the
Yeah, I have to say, I'm sounding a little annoyed for a second. Veronica and I cannot make these decisions alone. This is something that the COC board has to decide themselves and come up with the guidelines around it so that we are not caught in the middle, because that's how I feel.
So essentially, you just need to make the guidelines so that way you guys can move forward and figure out how you're gonna proceed. Was there a deadline in which you guys are planning to do so?
We're
Besides
gonna
the
have a
meeting?
proposal on June 12th to the changes to the HMIS policies and procedures to
And then it
align
gets
with those.
presented to the COC board and then we vote on it, et cetera.
It goes to the committee. If they like the recommendation, then it comes to the COC board for approval. And
I don't think it's going to be easy to get these guidelines clear.
I feel that. Yeah, I'm not saying that you guys are gonna get it done in like a day or 30 minutes, right?
I have guidance on, I have direction on what to do, but whether or not the next committee will approve that or not.
And whether or not people are gonna like it is also.
And we have 5 standing agendas, member organizations. So those are the ones that would be voting. So if you're not a regular standing HMIS committee member, just know that your conversation and your discussion is imperative and I want you there. But when we do the voting, it'll be those 5 folks.
Is it possible to send that, because it is in the HMIS work group, is it possible to send that to the broader COC listserv to ensure that people have the link and access to the meeting?
My listserv is over 100 people.
Or maybe just, I
So-
mean, or maybe getting a little bit, I don't have the information of the meeting, and so I wouldn't be able, I would need to get, reach out to you
Isn't it on our website?
individually.
It is, all meetings are published on the COC website, so all that information is available there. And if anybody wants to be added to the invitation, please send me an email, because I might write your names down, but I might not remember. But if you send me an email that you want to be invited, I can absolutely do that. And like I said, it's also publicly available on our website.
Victoria, the safest thing is check, if you make yourself a note to check the website on the 10th or something, you'll be able to see it.
And it's, the meeting location and stuff is publicized like months in advance. It's just the agenda topics are like 3 days in advance. Back to you, Paul.
I'm not gonna ask for public comment.
It's gonna be public comment.
Actually, you know what? I did have one question. Back up for a second. On the scorecard, is that where folks will get detailed information on what they need to fix?
And it'll be more than just it's blank. It'll be like, hey, you said this person is on the streets. There's a shelter enrollment that's before this, so are you sure that that's correct? That kind of check and balance that we don't currently have.
Okay, we're gonna move on to, committee report.
The HUD has announced the submission deadline of June 13th, so we're working on finalizing all of that. The committee approved the structure multipliers via email. Since it's an ad hoc, we don't have to have public meetings, so we can just, that's the only kind of meeting that we can do over email. And they are an average of the last 4 years, and they are really close in alignment with what we've done in the past. And so we'll have that to you by the next meeting. Right? Yeah, June 16th is the next meeting, so we'll have it to you on the next agenda.
Was there any public comment questions?
I have a real quick question. Judy, who's the right contact? Is it still Aaron's? Or your shelter? Just to verify your shelter data?
Oh, that's actually the Deborah.
Is she doing the motel vouchers too?
Erin does a lot of motel vouchers, but it's combined.
Okay, I'll reach out to Erin and she usually works back.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Resource information exchange app. Please, you know, here, did he? Anything?
He didn't, but he reached out to me for support. With coordinating a meeting, so I sent an email to all the interested parties. And those who could continue are providing their availability. So if you're interested and you didn't get that email, let me know. And if you did get the email, please respond with your availability if you haven't already. Did I? No. Oh, I don't think so. Is that to me? Did I? I don't remember.
I'll find it, respond, so.
Do you want me to email you? No. Okay. I got it. I will make sure that you're at. Thank you.
All right, projects update from Jeanette on the reentry collaborative.
Last time we met, they kind of just went over our resource fair and seeing if any other people wanted to join having tabling. We discussed the recidivism rate and trying to find some solutions for that. We're trying to find a way where we can, maybe I love it, where we could see what areas there are, or even the individual. I went to our bigger meeting that we had at Minnesota County Jail. And ideally, if it's somebody on the coast that I work with and we're able to track how many times they're going in, it's why are they doing that? How can my team or any other team could go in to kind of reduce their arrests and get them the help, because the circle doesn't work. Also have concerns when they arrest some of our individuals with an SUD disorder and they get shoved in jail and get cold turkey detox, like all that's really hard for them. So if there's a way to individualize and group those individuals so we can help or refer them for help to reduce the cost of them being incarcerated, to kind of get them in another track. We advocate for behavioral health court for a lot of people. So if that arrest is happening a lot and I know it, instead of just looking at booking logs, because I can't see when Mendocino County Sheriff arrests people unless I go and look. So then we could work with our DA to be like, can we do a diversion of behavioral health court? And then that way we can get them mental health and housing resources and connected. So ideally that'd be awesome. And I think that's all we talked about. I don't know if I missed anything, other people who were in the meeting.
They held a reentry, the reentry justice. Yeah, that one was, it was like a stakeholder group meeting. So there was a lot of good feedback and stuff. Yeah.
Any word on the recidivism rates for Fort Bragg, Willits, and like Mendocino?
Well, they do it all combined in countywide, and that's why I would love to be able to see it in different regions, see where we could focus. But yeah, we have the stakeholder meetings at the jail and a lot of these conversations.
The recidivism rates still haven't been disclosed to the public.
For the county?
For the county, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's like an email one.
It's available.
Yeah, and then anybody at the meeting, or it's available online. Buffy runs them monthly or weekly or as much as she can.
Publicly available? I always get it.
Because I tried looking to see the public availability. I know that
anybody
the DOJ, they do their own, I think it's the DOJ, they do their own
data collection system for that.
I could ask Buffy just to double confirm that they're publicly available. The meetings are always
Okay.
join us.
Any other project updates? I'm gonna move to the board protocols of governance. Take action.
Yeah. So attached to your packet are two reports from our consultants, ICF, the Emergency Shelter Evaluation Executive Summary and the Mendocino HMIS Data Review. This was a shelter evaluation project that began in the fall. If you remember, those evaluators did come to a COC meeting kind of early on, probably November-ish. It's right around a rainstorm, I think. Yeah, it was like a really bad weather situation. Yes. They've completed their shelter evaluation. The executive summary is there for you and the data review. See if there's any questions before we talk about next steps. Did everybody have a chance to read it? Or you can. Okay. I mean, my takeaways, there wasn't anything super earth shattering in it. It was really nice to have an outside review, kind of give clarity about the activities of the shelters. And it's interesting to see the HMIS data all kind of organized out there over the last couple of years. I think they did a kind of retrospective from the last 3 years about outcomes that are available through HMIS. So it was a useful exercise for me and helpful, I think. If any of the shelter directors have anything to say about it?
I really took hold with the review for building bridges, and there wasn't really anything surprising in it. And yeah, I like the process was good. It felt supportive, and yeah, just the outside perspective, especially in the comments around homelessness is going up, the cost of living is increasing and so the shelter outcomes to housing are good, and we can't keep up with the demand. So, it's good to see those things from an outside perspective. It's not just, we say these things a lot.
One of the things that caught my attention, and it caught my attention when the evaluator said it, and they also wrote it into the document, is that a community this size typically wouldn't have this many shelters, often not even any shelters at all, which caught my attention. So they did state that that's their case. If you look at the data nationwide, a community of our size would not normally have any shelters, much less the 3 that we have, which I thought was interesting. At the same time, they noted that universally people felt there were not enough shelter beds. So it's not to say that the demand isn't there. It's just that was interesting to me. I didn't know that we had a level of resource that other communities of our size do not have. I didn't realize that. They are available to come back and verbally kind of have a conversation about what they evaluated if the COC board would like that. So that offer is on the table. It would probably be at the June meeting. If you wanted to invite them, they'd come by Zoom to ask any questions. Some of the things that I felt like our evaluators would be willing to say in a conversation are not necessarily what they would write down. I really had to push them and say, don't sugarcoat it, just write the actual recommendation. So they were just being careful. And but they might be more frank in a conversation about some things than they would put in a written report. So that offer is there. The COC board would like it. Yeah,
I would really support that.
Okay.
I'm consistently interested in how come with the resources that we have in this community, and I can't imagine what our city streets would look like if we didn't have the resources that we have in this community. But our homelessness rate continues to rise.
Right.
And so that's even with all the new building and constructions that we had in the last, 3 to 5 years. So is it just the high housing prices? What is it? What is going on in the state of California?
I think, I mean, it'd be interesting to have that conversation with them. I mean, what I had hoped, but they really felt, and I have to defer to their professional integrity on this. I was like, is the cost of our shelters higher or lower than like the average? Like, I really wanted to pin them down on that. They really weren't willing to do that because, some of our shelters provide a great deal of service beyond just a bed. So they were like, you can't really just say a place that does bed in, out with no services at all. You can't bear the cost of places. But they had all these good reasons. But I still think we're here in Mendocino County. I don't get out to see other shelter systems ever. So having that perspective from a nationwide perspective to me was really valuable. I think they could share. They, some of the things they said verbally, and I was like, wow, what's going on in the world? They said, well, your shelters are not doing actual harm. And I'm like, there's shelters that do harm? And they were like, yes. And I'm like, what? So they are able to share some things that I find really useful from an outside, because they have this outside perspective.
There's a spectrum of homelessness as well. So it depends on the resiliency factor. There's a spectrum of homelessness. So if you have someone who's chronically homeless, main issues in our communities is, and this is nationwide, not even a California issue, is the fact that there are, well, I think New York was the first for the housing first model. New York is usually always first for a lot of dope things. But essentially, they focus on providing housing first and then the housing step model, reaching the person, meeting them where they're at, not forcing them to do classes or whatnot, but meeting them as human beings and not making, you have to take these classes, you have to follow these rules in order to be housed, which went against a lot. Back in the day, it was very revolutionary, went against a lot what was going on. But today in California, we don't really have as many chronic step-by-step processes. We see it in the medical facilities. We see individuals who have, let's say they have severe mental health issues. So they might have to be 5150. Then they go into the building bridge or the med management and RCS they get more intensive services. And then they break off into regular therapy sessions. And then they may go from 2 to 3 sessions a week to maybe 1 session a week to maybe once a month to maybe they don't need it anymore. And then they're weaned off the medication because they have the coping skills to move forward. It's the same process for housing. We don't have the funding, the capacity, the ability to do that same process when it comes to housing. And that's just one aspect of this convoluted matrix of variables of issues. Then you're not even considering the different levels of variances of where they're at. Medical issues, mental health issues, substance issues, all of these also play an intermingling role in that with their healing process. And you're also looking at some of the community oppressive issues. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And it's not just organizations, it's families. I've seen families kick out their own family member because they said that the sister said she broke her hair blow dryer. So she kicked her sister out on the street. And the most simple solution would be, hey, can you take me to Ross to go get my sister a hair blow dryer so I can live back with my sister? These oppressive things happen in families, and it sounds nonsensical and petty, but petty people cause horrible issues that are going on in our society, and it's a lack of support, and it's oppressive, and it starts within the family or a lack of supportive systems. And that's where these organizations have to pick up the slack. And then you have communities where you might have someone who is getting back on track with their feet. They have housing, and then guess what? Something happens, they end up losing a job, and guess what? They get blackballed from one specific tribal community, and then they can't find jobs anywhere else, which circles them back into homelessness. These are real issues. They're uncomfortable conversations, but they are real nonetheless. And so that's why we have the issues we have today. Some of the reasons, I should say.
I would add, if you want to look at that, look at the county and each city's housing element. They do an assessment every few years and they have a plan on how to do that. Part of our HAP6 application asks very targeted questions on the county's housing element and their plan on how to grow housing. So it's not just, I mean, we have, those things come up because there's not enough housing to go around.
Right. I know.
And that's really the heart of it, is there's just not enough units.
And it's not just units, it's income, it's jobs. You get them
Variety of
housed,
units.
but then when they have to be self-sustaining, if the community doesn't have enough open doors to bring in people to give them jobs to make them self-sustaining, then they're gonna go back and re-enter into homelessness. They're gonna fall back into using substances because the pressures are too much, right?
So.
Sorry, I didn't.
No,
mean to
no,
be
no.
like-
Getting into some of the deep behind homelessness, again, I don't want to push you all, obviously people come to your CFC meeting if you don't want to, but we could have some perspective there if you would like it. So if somebody wants that, somebody has got to make a motion.
Is there, would they come and present like with the whole board, or would it be?
Our vision was to invite them to the next board meeting. I mean, I would not let this go on forever. I would probably make it like a half-hour conversation. They would be on Zoom and you could ask them specific questions about either the report or their own kind of
What they're seeing.
experience or what they experienced here. You know, they did a lot of stakeholder interviews, and there was a wide range of viewpoints expressed in those stakeholder interviews. So they interviewed some Board of Supervisors members, some community members that don't share the same philosophy that you all do. So they did actually have a pretty broad stakeholder interview conversation that could be helpful for you to hear.
This would be in addition to the one-on-one.
Yeah, so I didn't quite clear that. So in addition to these public reports, each of the shelters got an individual report. And we've invited each of the shelters to have a one-on-one conversation just with the shelters. They can do that, not in public with all of you. So that offer is also there.
So
Oh, we need a motion,
the
is that what you said?
recommended action from the agenda is to accept the shelter evaluation. And provide direction to staff about inviting them to a future meeting. So we need someone to make that motion, if you want to approve this.
I think there should be a discussion about the shelter evaluation. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many people read it.
Maybe they haven't quite yet also.
But so before it's approved, it'd be nice to have a little bit of, I know that takes extra time.
So I'm gonna encourage you to do it for this reason. If you look at the data on exits from shelter, exits to permanent and transitional housing, they're not super high.
No, they're not.
I think it'd be important for you all to know whether that kind of outcome is standard for a shelter and to hear it from an outside source. So, if you look at exits to permanent or transitional housing from different kinds of projects, there's different kinds of outcomes there.
So I make a movement that they come to 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Or I don't care. Judy, that's what you should do right now. Say I make a move.
Yes,
Well, you can provide direction to staff on that one, right? Actually, when you make a motion to accept the reports, you're just accepting them.
Oh, yeah.
And direct staff to invite
Yes.
ICF for it. Okay.
Okay, so I guess I just did that.
Okay,
So
I'll
who's
repeat the
gonna
motion back.
Second the motion. So thank them.
I'll repeat the motion back. Made a motion to accept the shelter evaluation report and invite the ICF evaluators for a discussion on our next board meeting, up to 30 minutes. And the motion was seconded by Judy.
yes.
Now you can vote against it. No pressure. It's Judy's idea.
And further discussion, Paul, before we vote.
Any comment? Questions, discussion? Not Veronica, do you get the vote?
Yes. This will not be. When I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain to the motion on the table. I actually have a clarifying question. Will this be brought back as a draft or be approving the language right now?
I think we're approving the language. I noticed that it was listed as a draft, but really, they wrote
You
it.
should say what you just tried to say.
I don't think we can change the report.
Yeah.
Right, I would just like.
I think I'm just gonna ask more clarification for the racial disparities conclusion. Because they're saying that they've seen an overrepresentation for Alaska Native and Hispanic and Latinos who are receiving services. And I don't think that it's something that is just automatically an influx out of nowhere. So I wanted to see the variances within that data to see maybe is this considering more of our shelter bed reports from go out, do the pit count. So I was wondering if it was probably that pit count which spiked those numbers, because if it is coming from that, then it's because
It's just this shelter data, the outcomes of these 3 shelters out of HMIS.
So it's interesting. I want to see the variances on how that skyrocketed.
Can we accept the report as is? And that's a question to ask them when they come. And I review it for them ahead of time. They'll be more prepared to answer that.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Okay.
Maybe we can ask the questions for them to come back with for us.
That would be great. I would say between now and at least let's give them a week. So between now and a week before the next meeting, whatever that date is.
June 8th.
June 8th. If you have specific questions about the report, that if you could email those to Veronica, then we can get them to the evaluators. They'll be ready to answer them. That would be really helpful.
8th is a Sunday.
June 9th, sorry.
Yeah, let's do end of business June 9th.
I would appreciate that, Camille, because I'm afraid I won't get your question quite right. So if you could email it to Veronica, then we can get it to the evaluators.
Yeah. And that way it'll be helpful for the CAC as well.
Yeah.
Okay. When I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain to the motion on the table. Scott.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Jeanette.
Yes.
Joanne.
Yes.
Joanna.
Yes.
Judy.
Yes.
Camille.
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Ashley.
Yes.
Travis.
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Nothing.
Okay, we have another recommended action concerning coordinated entry policies and procedures.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in my update on the committee has recommended changes to on pages 10 and pages 16 to 17 of the policy. Page 10 falls on page 54 of your packet. And it adds the definition of region. I'm gonna scroll real quick for our Zoom folks, anybody looking what they're at. Okay, so it adds the definition of region. The MCHSCoC has identified 4 areas known as regions across the jurisdiction of Mendocino County, which are inland south, Ukiah, Hopland, Redwood Valley, inland north, Willits, Laytonville, Covelo, Leggett, coastal, Fort Bragg, Mendocino, Point Arena, Gualala, and Anderson Valley, Boonville, Navarro, and Philo. And then on pages 16 to 17 of the policies, or pages 60 to 61 of your packet. Scroll down a little. So that Zoom folks can see it too. Okay. So we made corrections or changes to section G4 or IV. One, it said that before we were doing the by name list every other week, because it had to be a special report by the HMIS lead. But now it's a repeatable report that everyone that has HMIS access can access at any time. And it's sent out on the first Thursday of every month currently. So we changed it to instead of the HMIS lead, it's the coordinated entry list manager on the first Thursday of every month or as requested. We can do it more often than that, but that's the bare minimum instead of every other week. And then we added the sentence later on in the paragraph about site-based projects will prioritize households that have selected the same region where the project is located. So the 4 regions I read before. If 0 households have selected the region where the project is located, so let's say that Anderson Valley got a new housing complex and nobody said yes to Anderson Valley on our by name list. If that's the case, the project will prioritize households that have not selected said region. It's the only change. That's it. And it's so that our site-based projects can narrow down their focus instead of offering it to everyone who's eligible, offer it to everyone who's eligible and said they want to live in that area. Any questions?
How often are we updating that? Because I mean, so if someone comes in and on entry says, I really want to live on the coast, is that, I mean, those things change.
Every 90 days, it's a minimum requirement that every assessment be updated at least every 90 days. If it goes longer than 90 days, they go on to a new tab that says, if they don't get an update, they will be exited before the next meeting. And then if they don't, then our coordinated entry list manager completes those exits as accordingly. So it is updated regularly.
I just know those things change.
Yes, yeah, that's pretty perfect. Yes, that's why we update it every 90 days.
Was there something in there? I can't remember. You just read it. But about, if they choose this one, which is not interested in housing
So,
in Mendocino County, then
we decided in the committee meeting that it didn't need to be in the policies and procedures. Because it's not an actual region. It's more in the direction of how to conduct the assessment. And so when someone is asking this question, on our paperwork, we have a 5th option where they're not interested in housing in Mendocino County. And that tells us they don't want to live locally, but we can still assist them. So that's not a reason to exclude them from the by name list, but that would be a reason to not refer them to a physical site in Mendocino County. And that's why it's updated every 90 days to where if they change their mind, they can. What's wrong?
why would it not be a reason to exclude them from coordinated entry?
Because they could be in rapid rehousing and you can help them relocate outside of the county.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay. Yes. So we're not using it as an exclusionary tool for all coordinated entry, but it is exclusionary for site-based projects only. If you don't want to live here, we're not going to refer you to a housing unit here. It's as simple as that. And our system is getting clogged up and it's not moving forward. And our housing property managers can tell you about this. Teresa could tell you about it.
Yeah.
With the plateau. You want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so we administer 20 project-based vouchers within the plateau development over on the coast. And we administer the rental assistance piece of that. We're not property managers. We administer the rental assistance, and we also we work the waiting list for those units. And so what happens with the plateau is a requirement to move into one of those project-based voucher units is you have to be permanently homeless. And we select people from the by name list in order to say, hey, you've been selected from the by name list, complete this application, turn it in, and you can get into the project waiting list. How people can apply. And so what happens, and this has been happening for a really long time, well, since the plateau opened, not that long, but we'll select 50 people from the by name list, and we'll get like 3 applications from people who are interested in the coast. But what you don't realize also is that that by name list goes out to all of our service providers like RCF and CHC, and they have to spend the time contacting those people to identify if they're interested in the plateau. And so it's just, there's so much time and effort that we've been putting into finding viable candidates. And so that's kind of where this process evolved into. And so it will be really, really helpful, and people won't be spinning their wheels and wasting their time, and much more efficient.
So do we need to make a motion? I just noticed we have just about 10 minutes left.
So we do need formal approval, yes.
Wants to make the motion.
I can make a motion to approve, what is it? Approve, review and approve changes to the MCHSCoC coordinated entry policies and procedures.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Teresa and Faith.
Any comment? There's no comment. Veronica, can you take the vote?
Again, when I call your name, please say yes, no, or abstain. Scott.
Yes.
Faith.
Yes.
Jeanette. Yes. Joanne.
Yes.
Joanna.
Yes.
Judy.
Yes.
Camille.
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Ashley.
Yes.
Travis.
Yes.
Teresa.
Yes.
Motion approved.
On to options for board seats.
Yes, so we have a total of 6 board seats that will be expiring in the next few months before. Sorry, tomorrow. Oh. So on May 20th, tomorrow, board seats will expire for Mendocino County Youth Project. It's a representative board seat. Nation's Finest, again, a representative board seat. I guess they're all representative. And Redwood Community Services. Representative board seat will expire on August 15th for Adventist Health representative board seat. Camille Leggett, and the individual with lived experience of homelessness. She's completing the term of the previous person that was appointed. But she's less than a year on it. And then the RCHDC seat for housing developer or property manager will expire. And so we're accepting nominations for these 6 board seats that will be voted on at the July 15th. Oh, no, July, I don't know, 21st? The July COC board meeting. We'll be accepting nominations through Tuesday, July 15th at 5 p.m. That gives me Wednesday and part of Thursday to process that and get all the information out and on the agenda and things like that. So if you or someone you know would be interested in being nominated for the seat, shoot me an email. I'll put it on the COC website, and I will also issue a press release.
So the nomination process is to email you and say that you'd like to be nominated or guest nominate someone else.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you're nominating someone else, tell me who they are and CC them on the email so they know you're. Yes, I've had those. That's it. Any questions?
And if I remember, we're getting back on track, but these will be 2 or 3 year seats. I think they're gonna be.
We didn't decide on the term length for the ones that expire in August. But the ones that are expiring tomorrow are 1-year term seats.
So I thought we staggered the seats so that they wouldn't all come up at the same
Yeah, but we
time.
forgot that were.
No, I know that, but I thought the ones that expire now will get on a 3-year cycle. I thought the point of doing the 1, 2, and 3 was so that we didn't have everybody all at once.
Oh.
But they start with a fresh 3-year, everybody would start fresh with a 3-year cycle, but you're right, I don't know what about those August ones? Does that make sense?
Well, they were already three.
They were already 3?
And if we make them 3 again, 3 years from now, we're gonna have 6 seats to fill again.
Right, which is not ideal, but it's not terrible, there'll be some.
So what if we did the ones that expire tomorrow, the 1-year terms will revert to 3-year terms. And then we won't have any more 1-year terms. So how about the ones that expire in August are 1-year terms, but then they're still in the cycle of someone else who has 2-year term. I don't know what to do.
How about we do just a quick action item next meeting in
Okay.
June to get that clear?
Okay, we'll get clarity from next one. Great.
Let's not forget that.
Dates for the board, Veronica?
8/15. Okay. So I actually have updates on the homeless housing assistance and prevention program and the HUD Continuum of Care program. Starting with HAP, I wanted to share about the stakeholder meetings that Megan already announced about. So more information to come through that. We have successfully established a partner on completing the county components of the HAP Round 6 application. The executive office has, they have a contract with multiple grant writers and they work back with one, BFK, is that right, Megan? BKF is going to be working with us. The contractor, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. The person that's been assigned to the project, she's got experience with continuums of care. I asked her what HMIS was and she knew what it was. I didn't have to define it. She's completed several HAP applications with other jurisdictions. So she has some extensive experience in this. So I'm not having to educate the grant writer, which is huge. And so that's exciting. The other component of the HAP 6 application is an encampment resolution. So the COC doesn't currently have an encampment resolution policy, but the application wants a copy, or if you don't have one, what is your plan to create one? So the COC, as a HAP 6 eligible applicant, needs to develop an encampment resolution policy. The county has a very simple version, like a 1-page, right?
The county has an encampment coordination protocol with the city of Ukiah.
Yes.
I think that both the city of Ukiah and the county will be doing their own encampment ordinances very shortly. So I'm not sure what it would look like if the COC had an encampment. What do they want to call it? Resolution that is in conflict with the jurisdiction. So I don't know what to do about that.
So it's not necessarily about what you do, but it's how you do it. Well, because they're gonna intervene and they're gonna break up the encampment. But what are the parameters on that when you do that? And
What are
so,
whose parameters?
right, like how to COC contractors.
I don't know.
It's the environment of the application.
I don't know how
Contract
to
with
do it.
anybody to do encampments.
Excuse me?
We don't contract as a COC with anybody to do encampments.
That is true.
So how would we do that at all?
They still want you to have one. because they want COCs and all jurisdictions involved in collaborating and having a uniform approach to resolving encampments in the jurisdiction. So I don't imagine this is something, we don't have time to discuss this, but I needed to bring this to your attention that this is a component of the HAP6 application, that both applicants are required to individually meet. So the COC has to have one or have a plan to develop one.
Either the city or the county allow. Yeah.
Well, I think
Is there any capacity to do this collaboratively with the county and cities?
I
mean, try to have something that's cohesive in any kind of way.
no, I mean,
I know. Last or something, about to see home services disintegrate. Next 5 years.
I don't think the COC. Are you asking if the COC has an official role to play in the ordinances developed by jurisdictions?
Ordinances? No.
There's encampment ordinances that that.
This is not an ordinance.
No, I know, I'm just saying that some jurisdictions already have encampment ordinances on the book. This is happening at the same time that the governor just sent out his model encampment ordinance. So some jurisdictions already have encampment ordinances on the books.
Right.
Others are updating them. I don't know I guess I don't know enough about what a COC's encampment resolution would.
Do they have an example?
Yes.
Because sometimes they love putting together examples.
Yes, they have an example.
Okay, so
And,
maybe
and it's the same policy that the encampment ordinance was developed based on. It's all the same.
are they asking
But what
COCs to
role
endorse that
do you
ordinance?
do? No, they're just saying, when one of your funders is involved in an encampment, how do you engage with them? Like when you're resolving this encampment, are you giving them referrals to services? Are you giving them at least, 24 hours notice or whatever it is? Those basic.
Is who giving who? I guess I'm not.
It would be whoever the COC is funded to be engaged in that process.
So I know on the reservations, we have encampments, but that would be us doing it. I
Right.
don't think any of you guys would go and do it.
Northern Circle responded to our future RFP to say, we'd like to have some funding to do some street outreach alongside our tribal law enforcement when they resolve the encampments that are on our tribal
We can't
lands.
even get law enforcement to go out to
Right, well, that's why I said tribal law
They
enforcement.
don't have tribal law enforcement.
Okay,
I feel really slow, but does resolve mean breakup?
Yes.
Thank you.
yes.
A very soft way of saying. It's a secret.
I guess, I mean, let's move on to kind of.
So this is something we have to do. The COC has to.
No, I get it.
I'm trying to figure out
resolve.
Maybe we should put this back on the calendar for the next meeting.
Yes, I gotta leave.
I don't know what to say. I mean, it seems like there's some sticky issues, but I don't know if I don't know if it needs a subcommittee or something. Do we need to add hoc committee about this?
Built-in solution.
Oh, that would be a place to start.
I just want to say that I think this is a huge conversation. And I know that none of our funding at McCavan, our outreach funding is about breaking up encampments at all. We've been there when encampments have been broken up and helped people. We advocated for people to be able to get back in there and get their medications out and things like that. But so I'm a little bit concerned about this conversation and where it's leading in terms of the roles of community partners who have county contracts.
Especially combined with the new contract language that Cory wants to put in.
Pardon me, I couldn't hear that, Sage.
Especially when you consider it alongside the encampment cleanup language they are adding to contracts.
Right. I mean, I've received phone calls from a person for my team to get out and clean up a mess. And it was after hours on the weekend, and we don't have the staffing for that, and we don't have the funding for that. And that information wasn't received very well by that person. They had a high expectation that we would do it. And so I think that we really need to spend some careful time with any language around what the expectations are of the COC and memberships and persons with contracts. Because there's only so much money in those contracts, and this is a huge problem, and I'm concerned. This is all new to me, hearing this today.
I think that it would, since we don't have the draft, and I'm sorry, Veronica, I didn't look at it. Yeah, probably should have, but without the draft encampment resolution that they want the COC to have, what is it called again? Encampment what?
Resolution policy.
Resolution policy in front of us, it's hard for us to know whether or not this is like some benign thing we're all fine with, or is it something more?
Do you want it?
No, I'm thinking that perhaps the Shelter and Solutions Committee would be the place to first review that policy. So that there's a little bit.
The only problem is they meet every other month and they're not gonna meet again until July 9th.
Which is getting kind of late.
You need this by, well, I think we should have it, or we need this at least. Well, you know what? Maybe we put this as part of our stakeholder engagement.
I think, I don't know about that, but I think July 9th actually might not be bad, because I think we'll have I just got an email today about City of Ukiah putting an ordinance in place. So I think that some jurisdictions will have made some movement by July 9th that will help inform this process.
Okay.
So I know it's cutting it a little close. You feel like it's too close?
No, it'll have to be approved at the July COC meeting.
You could.
Because I can't, or we say in our applications.
Do you feel like it's like tidy enough to bring to the next COC board without it being like a craziness?
Super simple.
And maybe I'm making this too hard. Everyone just seems so alarmed about it. I felt like. Maybe just general policy changes happening. I can't hear you.
We can ask for a special meeting just to address this from the Shelter and Solutions.
Okay.
So how about this? Why don't, maybe we put it on the June board meeting unless we feel like we need a special meeting with Shelter and Solutions first, or honestly, we may end up needing a special board meeting at the COC board, because HAP 6 is so complicated. This is one piece of it that may be necessary anyway. So maybe Veronica, you and I can figure out that timing on that. There might be more than just this that the COC board needs to weigh in on in this really like extensive HAP 6 application with a lot of pretty heavy-handed expectations of everybody. The COC, the jurisdictions, like the world.
Certainly sounds like they're planning to make homelessness larger.
California's trying not to, but I mean. Paul.
Right.
I have a COC update, but you probably should call for public comment.
Yeah. Any comment? Comments, questions?
I got an email last week from HUD with our COC debriefing. Our score is about where it's always been. It was 145.5 out of 200. So about a C. There's some specific areas. I didn't get it soon enough to include in this packet. Plus there was so much already. I thought it was a little too much. But know that I got it and I'll be bringing it to you soon. Additionally, on Friday, and I didn't get the email until Monday, today, HUD has reissued the COC builds NOFO. They have canceled the first one. It doesn't count. And applications opened on Friday and they are due by June 26th. I haven't had a chance to get through the full packet to see if the COC is going to be required to do another competition where it opens it up and lets people apply and all that jazz. But I think that we just have to reassess the application or applications we previously received with the new scoring. So the NOFO changes the scoring that HUD will use. It eliminates the 7 or 8 points that was under racial equity work that each of the applicants is doing, and it takes those points and adds it in other categories. And so if the COC wants to sponsor the application, the other thing is it only will fund 8 projects nationwide. Before it was 25. Wow. They've also increased the maximum award per contractor. So I'm not even sure if it's worth it at this point to apply. What do you guys think? I don't have a motion on the table or anything for you to.
How many applications were there last time?
1 by RCHDC.
Oh, so it wouldn't be that. It's not.
But it would take my time to do all of that, and the application this time is in eSnaps instead of
How
grants.gov.
many did you say, Veronica? 8?
8 nationwide.
No,
Maximum? What is the maximum?
Depends on the size of your jurisdiction. There are categories. For us, it's a maximum of
I'm
7.
like,
7?
yeah,
Yes. So
I feel like at some point we have to set some limits on what our capacity is, and I just from my perspective, I don't feel like we have the capacity to administer this as Veronica supervisor.
Ashley, has RCHDC found alternative funding for Marlene? Is it Marlene?
Marigold.
Marigold. Or the one that you guys applied?
We're working towards it. I can tell you the separate property that we're trying to develop right now, we're already at 5 funders and we can't even make the deal. Like what we are capable of having access to at this point to develop new properties is dwindling fast. So I get the manpower and the capacity, but at the same time, our options are becoming very, very limited in the same.
Others? Joanna, did you have something?
I was thinking that it's unfortunately, and this is across the board nationwide, the funding streams are limited and the competition has gone exponentially higher. And when I'm looking at funding streams, I'm looking at geographical areas because they're going to go for the numbers where the highest numbers can be served.
The first 30 million of this 30 million of the 75 million set aside for this has to go to basically balance of state COCs that have like less than 5 COCs in their state, and that is not California. A lot of people call that the California rule. So when it was 75 for 25 applications, it was viable. 75 million for 8 applications, that's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So do you need direction from the board?
I don't know, I think so. Do we? Is
I'm
it
over
okay if
here
I don't do this?
Being very sporty.
We can't vote on it because it's not an agenda item. But I can bring it back as an agenda item with all of that stuff if you guys really want me to direct that.
Yeah.
Megan says no. Don't want to.
I mean, I would
RCHDC doesn't
reserve
think it's viable.
I know for whatever,
Need
it's
it,
worth, so we
but-
have a conversation with our state. I mean, maybe we can follow up.
And yeah, I mean, I can talk to Jessica and Angie, and I can see on their side, you know, what they're looking at and try to get you some more specifics.
I'm also concerned that because all of those forms were done for grants.gov, they won't transfer over to ESAPS. And the dates are before the NOFO started, so I don't know if they would even accept those same forms. I just, and a lot of the NOFO is silent on that stuff when I went through it, like, so we're gonna have to wait for HUD to have a meeting.
I think for me, I feel like there's a lot of issues that our COC is dealing with right now. We just had this really complicated conversation about HMIS. We have the HAP6 things, we have stakeholder engagements, we have dwindling resources. And we have to prioritize at some point. We have this encampment thing that people seem a little alarmed about. We have to prioritize at some point where we spend our time, and frankly, where Veronica and I spend our time, because there is no compensation to any of Veronica's time for anything she spends on the COC builds, or almost anything she does, to be honest. So I need the COC to prioritize what's most important to them at some point. That was like so aggressive.
Anybody
I think we should.
Count Megan?
I got no room. All right. So how about no COC build unless RCHDC has some really compelling thing that will make us revisit? Is that fair?
And I will speak with Andy and Jessica and see if they have anything that really
So
makes it
compelling.
a reason why we should.
Okay.
Don't have any updates on any other funding? There was something bugging me in the back of my brain, but it's gone. Cash with fun. No one.
Thanks, Veronica. Next exciting installment will be Monday, June 16th, at 30 minutes.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, say it.
I halfway's my.